The Predator franchise is back and more alive than ever thanks to a brand new animated anthology by director Dan Trachtenberg and Joshua Wasung. Following on from Trachtenberg's creation of Prey back in 2022, this is a new triptych story following 3 different eras and 3 different warriors that have to do battle with the Predator that steps into their ancient conflict. And I absolutely loved Predator Killer of Killers, which is now streaming only on Hulu. And I think it's a really exciting and fun addition to the series, and I think it's one of the best yet. So if you're like me and you really like Prey, and were interested in where this whole series was going to go now that they're doing period pieces, Predator Killer of Killers is so fantastic, and it's really a dream come true for a fan like me. Because I love Predator not just because of the movies, but also because of the video games and the comic books, which really gave this series a flexibility and a breadth of stories that the films didn't for a really long time. So join me as we talk about Predator Killer of Killers, one of the best Predator movies yet. Back in 2022, Dan Trachtenberg brought the Predator franchise back to life with Prey. Before that film, his most famous creation yet was probably 10 Cloverfield Lane and his overall involvement with the Cloverfield franchise. But Prey was a real shot in the arm for Predator fans and the franchise as a whole. Before that, I think this franchise was pretty dormant aside from some comics and some video games, because the AVP films frankly killed it off for the most part. And after Prey, a lot of discussion turned to what was going to happen next with the Predator movies. Eventually, last year, it was announced that Predator Badlands would be the next live-action feature film, and that's still coming out later this year in November. But earlier at the beginning of 2025, Trachtenberg revealed that there were actually 2 Predator films that were coming out this year. One of them was a secret project that no one had talked about yet, and in April, the trailer for that came out, and that was the trailer for this, which is Predator Killer of Killers. So like I said before, this is co-directed by Dan Trachtenberg and Joshua Wasung, who's the founder and chief creative officer of the Third Floor Inc., which is a visual effects and animation studio that actually hadn't independently made any of their own features before, but was the major actual animation studio behind Killer of Killers. And this was produced by John Davis, Dan Trachtenberg, Mark Toberoff, and Ben Rosenblatt. And the story is by Dan Trachtenberg and Micho Robert Rutare, and Rutare is credited for writing the screenplay. This also has music by Benjamin Wallfish, and it's heavily using Alan Silvestri's classic themes from the original Predator, and I really enjoy how that is repurposed for each of the eras, and given a lot of unique styles throughout it, it adds a lot of personality and familiarity, and the music is really excellent here. And in the lead roles of the voice cast, we have Lindsay Levanche as Ursa, Louis Ozawa Changchen as Kenji, and Rick Gonzalez as Johnny Torres. And Michael Biehn, who you might know as Hicks from Aliens, has a small role as Vandy in the World War II section, which I think is a really cool nod to the larger context of this world. This is an animated triptych anthology. You have 3 distinct time periods here. There's the Viking period, which is subtitled The Shield, because there are several different chapters for this. Then there is a feudal Japan story which follows a ninja and a samurai's battle, and that's called The Sword. And then finally you have a World War II aerial combat story, which is called The Bullet. Now, I don't want to get into spoilers yet for anything that happens. I will be talking about spoilers later in this video, because there's some really awesome stuff that I just don't want to spoil for anyone. I watched the initial trailer for this when it first came out. I think I watched it in line when I was at Universal Studios because it came out and I was really hyped. And I didn't know anything about it. Like I said before, this was the secret project that Trachtenberg and company had been keeping under wraps. And so that was the reveal that this was an animated film. And when I was watching the trailer at first, I thought that this was going to be a TV show or a miniseries because it was very clearly set in different distinct time periods. So I thought, oh, so it's a show or a miniseries, and every episode is going to be set at a different different time period. And that wasn't the case. By the end of the trailer, it showed explicitly that this was a feature film. It's about 90 minutes in total. I think it's really smart that this is a feature film instead of a TV show, because the pacing is really tight. And actually, and again, no spoilers yet, Killer of Killers is telling a very cohesive story that takes place across these different time periods. And while we'll get into what that means once we get into spoilers, I think that actually each section has its own really tight story that it's telling as well. There's about 20 minutes dedicated to each section. And that means that unlike a typical Predator film, which is sort of, there is an overall story that's happening and a character arc that's happening for the characters that are involved in this story, and then the Predator enters and changes that dynamic completely. This is really, really focused on the conflict with the Predator. There's something else that's happening. Our initial Viking story is about a Viking warrior, a warrioress named Ursa, I believe. She is a mother, and she is with her son and their clan looking for revenge. And then that plan of revenge is interrupted by a predator. And in feudal Japan, you have this conflict between a ninja and a samurai, and the battle between the two is once again interrupted by a predator. And then the third one is World War II, and you have this American pilot and mechanic, Johnny Torres, and he is drafted into World War II, and in the middle of this dogfight, a predator shows up, this time a predator spaceship. Because each section is about 20 minutes long, we're getting into the climactic fight with the predator really fast. So a little bit of plot setup, you get to know the characters, and I really do like all the characters. I think that they establish them really well in this. And but then boom, the predator's there, maybe about the predator has a presence at least 5 minutes in, and then a few more minutes in, and it's full-on conflict. And I think that each section is really exciting. The action is fantastic. The creators behind this specifically said that they had stunt consultants and sword masters and a variety of stunt people that were working with them to provide them with real-life footage of how this combat should be done, the realistic ways to fight with a sword or an axe, and guide them through that. And I think that the animated style with this is really fantastic. It is just heightened enough. I would say that a lot of the cinematic language and the blocking and the choreography is realistic and could be replicated in a film. There is a really long one-take fight in the Norse section, and that is really thrilling. And then you get to see this complex combat play out in the choreography. But then, of course, it's all animated, so you're not dealing with human error or physicality. Everything can be just perfect for how this is staged. But I think there's a certain level of commitment to human physicality within at least the human characters that make it really tense and believable. And I really like each of the main characters and what they're after. If I could sum up each character in a word to describe what they're after or what their challenge is, Ursa, the Norse warrior, is vengeance, and Kenji, the ninja in the feudal section, is honor, and then Torres in the World War II section is worth. And that's something they're all after, and something that gets disrupted by the predator and gets sort of counterbalanced by the predator attacking, disrupting their plans, killing people that they loved, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really exciting to see unfold, especially without any spoilers, because I really didn't know how this was going to play out besides having that three-piece structure to it. But it gets more complicated than that, actually. Like I said, there is a larger story happening here besides that. And the animated element of this means that there is exaggeration that can happen in moves and in combat. People are, thrown across huge spaces, that there is some exaggeratedness that you wouldn't buy that might break your level of immersion if it was a live-action Predator. The tension of great Predator movies is to highlight the human vulnerability of your protagonist. What's great about the original Predator, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like I said before, it's the second greatest movie of all time after Evil Dead 2 and before Kiki's Delivery Service and Chungking Express and before Sunset and yada yada yada. I won't get into the whole thing right now, but it is that it takes in the first half this hardcore commando unit full of massive men, like Arnold at the center, with Arnie being your hero. You always think, well, he's larger than life. Nothing can stop him. He's unstoppable. And by the time the Predator enters halfway through, undercuts that and highlights the human vulnerability of Schwarzenegger. That actually, it's not Schwarzenegger's muscles that are going to save him and stop this monster. It's his wits. It's his plans. It's understanding the enemy and stopping the enemy. So that's, the great Predator films have that and really emphasize that, which is why I really love Prey, because you have this element of it being, a Native American tribe that's under attack, and that for the most part, Naru, our lead there, played by Amber Midthunder, is vulnerable. She's smart, she's strong, she's witty, but only in a human way. And everything that she has to do to stop the Predator is only possible through human ingenuity. You get a lot of that through here, but there is some exaggerated combat. There's some more hand-to-hand crazy fighting with the Predators here that really is only possible with animation, that you can buy it a little bit more, that these characters are larger than life and can really go wild with their attacks. And the Predators also are more exaggerated too. In all of the other Predator films, the monsters have been played by people in suits, and the Predator is one of my favorite monster designs ever. It's such a fantastic creature, and I love the levels of the creature too. It's all set in stone from that original film, which is cloaked, you don't see it at all, uncloaked but masked, and then the mask comes off and you see the face underneath, and it's these levels and layers to the character that reveal like its true nature. And here we already understand what the Predator is, the Yautja, and this, these monsters and how they hunt and what they're after and their style of combat, cloaking devices and everything. So you don't have to worry about that. And instead, what we focus on is distinct types of Predators in each of these eras. The Viking era, the Predator is massive, massive, massive. They've always emphasized the Predators as being bigger than humans, but this guy is like 15 feet tall. And then in the Japanese section, and the Predator in the Viking era has this prosthetic shield on his hand that sends out like shockwaves, which is a really interesting new weapon that I've never seen in any Predator stuff before. And then in the feudal Japan era, it's much more focused on being cloaked. It's full armor over face and all its entire body, and is focused on like chains and whips and spears and blades, which is really cool. Which is a great contrast to the to our ninja. Is almost like a kindred spirit to some degree. And then in the World War II section, the Predator is in its ship, and it's all ship combat. And it's cool looking. You really don't see much of it. It's got like an eye patch. It's all about this, dogfighting in the air, which is awesome, and something that you've barely ever seen in any Predator film before. I think that The Predator from about a decade ago, had some combat on the ship, but that movie is terrible. And but this is, ship to ship combat, which is it's great. Everything here feels very fresh. And there's a few more reveals that, again, we'll save for spoilers, but I really, really appreciated it. I appreciated the thought and the ingenuity that went into all these different representations of the Predator, all the unique eras that were represented in this story, and that each era had a very distinct character, a distinct style of story, a different type of conflict that was being interrupted by the Predator, and that I really enjoyed each character, even though you don't have much time to get to know them during each of their stories. But it's a really fantastic script that is very well honed. And what I really want to talk about before we get into spoilers is how I think that Killer of Killers is like a fan's dream come true. Because for the longest time after Predator 2, the Danny Glover starring one from the early 90s, there has been this talk about Predator throughout the centuries. Now, in that film, one of the predators gives Danny Glover's character, Detective Hartigan, this flintlock pistol from the 1700s. And it is this realization that the predators have been hunting on Earth for way longer than we have ever known. And after that, there have been a lot of comic books that explored that. Now you can see on my desk, I have one of the Predator anthologies from Dark Horse. And a lot of those stories just took place over a lot of different eras, with a lot of different genres in addition to this main Predator genre, if you will. Everyone was just like, for the longest time, well, give us that in film form. But afterwards, we had Predators, which I really like, which is about a group of mercenaries that are abducted and dropped onto this alien planet to be hunted in like a game ground. And then you have the AVP movies, obviously, which is mashing together the xenomorph with the Predator. And then you've got The Predator, which is like I said, really bad. I never want to talk about the Predator again. It is formless and directionless, and it's just bad all around. But for the longest time, it was, well, give us, Predator in feudal Japan. Give us Predator versus cowboys. Predator in World War II. Give us, Predator versus Vikings. All these things are very clear, like well-loved, almost pulp stories. Mashing them together with the Predator and seeing, the results that come from that. And this is finally giving us that after Prey gave us our first taste. And Prey was so good because it took what I think is the general consensus of what a Predator film is, which is part action, part sci-fi, part horror, into a sort of period piece, because it takes place in the 1700s with a Native American tribe that comes into conflict with the Predator. And that really gave it this really distinct flavor. It has great characters, it has great action, it's got a cool take on the Predator, and then you add in this new layer that, to me, made it feel like this series, as a series of movies, was finally getting like unlimited possibilities. Finally living into like the full potential that the comics had shown us for a really long time. And so it's obvious that like Trachtenberg didn't necessarily want to just dedicate each live action film to another time period. Badlands is clearly taking place in the future, and it's going to have some sort of crossover with the Alien franchise because there is a Weyland-Yutani synthetic that's one of the lead characters. And I believe it's been said that the Yautja at the center is actually the protagonist of the film, which is another challenge and another mix-up, and I think that's really interesting. Trachtenberg is challenging like the predetermined narrative constructs and confines of what a Predator movie can be, and that's really exciting. And here with this, it's giving us everything that we could want in a really tight package, and it's very stylish. It was interesting. Trachtenberg had a quote that I read while I was preparing for this video about like what led him to make this movie as it was. I was toiling over exactly what to do and what the take could be. Once we had that little nugget of like, oh, actually, we could be doing more. That the movie wouldn't just be Twilight Zone as an anthology, they would be Pulp Fiction as an anthology. That these stories could really be interwoven and build to something incredibly special. And this is where we have to get into spoilers. So be warned, and absolutely go see Killer of Killers because I love this thing. Okay, so the big spoiler and the big reveal of this film is that we're actually building up all three of these stories into a surprise fourth act, which really caught me off guard at first. At the end of Ursa's story, you see her grieving because she loses her son. Again, spoilers. And then it slowly fades into her on a ship, like an alien ship. And we pan over and there's someone else there. And that leads us into Kenji's story. At the end of Kenji's story, he and his brother kill the Predator, which I think is super well done. It's this, I love it. Oh my gosh. This really cool katana duel that leads to them just slicing apart the Predator, but his brother dies of his injuries. We transition again. Now he's on the ship. And then we pan over again and we see Torres, and we get Torres' story. And then at the end of Torres' story, it becomes a little bit more explicit, and it shows that after he's beaten the Predator, that another Predator ship comes down a little while later and abducts him. And now he's on the ship. And what we find out is that all of these different survivors of predator battles are abducted and put into cryostasis, and eventually woken up on this ship and are forced into combat. And this is where we get this whole idea of like the killer of killers, and that this is like becoming the killer of killers is what the Yautja, aspire to be, and this is their drive, right? There's no autistic spinal cord fluid that they're after, like in The Predator. I swore I wasn't going to talk about that film again. Instead, it's this sense of honor and this sense of power over others, becoming the killer of killers. And so this ritual sees them taken to an alien planet. It becomes very Predators coded at this point, put into this ritual where they're taken into an arena surrounded by Yautja in the stands, and they say, you three do combat with each other, and the last person alive battles this lead predator, this like king predator, who looks fucking amazing. This king predator has a cape made out of fucking spines, okay? That is the raddest shit I've ever seen, and I loved it. I went nuts when I was watching this unfold. So you get this conflict, right? It's Ursa, Kenji, and Torres, and they still can't understand each other. They get these explosive collars put around their necks. If they try and leave, it's going to blow their heads off, which they demonstrate on like another predator that came into conflict with someone else probably, which kind of hints towards that lore in Predators where there's these warring clans, right? And that's sort of another aspect that I think it's being hinted at again. They come into conflict, and it's interesting because Torres, he is given that same flintlock pistol from Prey, which was also originally in a comic. He has like one bullet. Clearly the Predators don't quite understand modern human technology, and he's trying to reason with Kenji and Ursa. And it's an interesting idea because Kenji begins to understand Torres and what he's trying to say, and is wanting peace and is laying down his arms and doesn't want this conflict that drove him to fight his brother in his story. Man, it's so good. Like, the character work and the arcs are so good. It all makes sense because I didn't say this in the non-spoiler part, but Kenji's story is almost completely wordless. And all the emotions and all the actions and everything, all the character decisions are done without dialogue. And it works super well. So Kenji and Torres, begin to bond together, but Ursa is still looking to kill them and has this warrior spirit and this continued sense of grief over losing her son, which, in her mind probably wasn't that long ago. They're cryo-frozen, I'm sure, pretty soon after in time. After the stories that we see. Eventually they band together and they fight first this giant predator beast, which looks really cool, and Torres is even swallowed and cuts himself out at one point. And then the conflict becomes eventually trying to escape, get onto a predator ship and fly out of there. They fight this king predator who is just massive and so strong and overpowering them. One interesting note that I found was that I don't think a plasma caster is used ever. Now I've got my predator here. I've had this guy for a while. This is so nice. It's NECA. NECA, please sponsor me. So if you can see on his shoulder, that's his plasma caster. He shoots Jesse the Body Ventura and blows a hole in him with that in the original. I don't think I ever see that used actually in this, which is interesting, as these predators are using a lot of different types of weapons, and also Prey sort of shows that predator technology has continued to advance over the centuries. And this, they're clearly not in their own time anymore when they're on this planet, but it never says when. It could be the 50s or the 40s. It could be modern day. It could be the 80s and they cross over with Dutch. It could be the far future. It could be anything, because it's an indiscriminate amount of time that's passed since they were abducted. Killer of Killers ends on a kind of a cliffhanger, but it is a very satisfying story still, because they're able to get on the ship, they escape, and Ursa sacrifices herself. She's awesome. She has this. Her combat is all shield based, basically. She uses these two like broken shields to decapitate a bunch of people in her own story, and she gets a predator shield. And she's using that. She jumps off the ship to like destroy this this chain that's kind of like hooked to their ship to let them escape. They take off. She is there left with the king predator, and she says a really interesting thing. She says, "I couldn't let you catch my boys." And she's like taking on this mothering role to Kenji and Torres, in the aftermath of her own loss of her own son and this grief. Man, it's that's so good. The character work is just so excellent. Kenji and Torres fly off, and then the king says, let the hunt begin, and then all these ships go after them, and that's the end of the story, right? And that's it. And you're like, okay, Killer of Killers 2, like, give it to me now. Well, surprise, surprise. Ursa is frozen again, and they take her into this huge area. There's hundreds of thousands of frozen, people, survivors, aliens, whoever has fought the Predator before and survived. I was really expecting Dutch. I've been waiting for Dutch to come back to this series for so long. The first ever Predator comic, it deals with Dutch's brother who's looking for him, wants to find out what happened to him. They wanted to bring back Arnie as Dutch for Predators, as like the sting at the end of him being revealed. That didn't happen. They wanted him to be brought back for the Predator as like this secret weapon that gets sent to them. That didn't happen. I've just been waiting for more Arnie and Predator for the longest time, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen. But this reveal sort of to me says that it's more likely than ever, because now you have survivors of Predator conflicts frozen and brought back eventually. Well, he could just be chilling, like literally, in one of those. But the big reveal is they push through, and they stop on one. And who is frozen in one of these containment units? It's Naru from Prey. And it's this big reveal of like, she was captured. She's been frozen. What's going to happen with her? Now, if you remember at the end of Prey, she's given that flintlock pistol as like a sign of honor, but that shows back up in Predator 2. So it's like, well, eventually the Predators got that back, right? And then it shows up in here. So it's like the Predators got it back again. The Predators. Yeah. So the Predators had to have gotten it after Prey. Got it back for this one because it takes place in the 40s, and then still have it somehow, probably because it was left in the combat zone to be given to Danny Glover's character, right? Because at the end of Prey, they're showing these drawings that the Native Americans have created, their tribe has made, documenting this conflict. And at the very end, you see these Predator ships are coming down from the storm, coming back to the tribe again, and you're like, well, shit, like, did they get all wiped out? Is this Prey 2? Like, what's going to happen? So I don't know if they're ever going to be explicit about what happened, but it seems like they abduct Naru and they freeze her, and now she's there, and that's like the big cliffhanger, is they're off trying to escape, she's there. What's going to happen? I don't know, but I'm really excited. I really want more. Badlands is coming up, like I said, in November, and it'll be interesting to see if it directly continues some plot threads from this, or if we're going to keep Killer of Killers here off to this side, and the live action movies over here. But there's so many possibilities. The world for Predator has just been opened up so much, and it's really exciting. And please just give me more right now. I love this. I was thinking about where I would rank this, and man, I love this so much. So if you saw my Predator retrospective from a few years ago, go check it out if you haven't, because I really love making that. It's one of my favorite videos that I've done. I put a ranking at the end of that, and so this is my updated ranking for all the Predator movies so far, including Killer of Killers. So of course I still have the original Predator at number 1. Nothing's ever going to beat the original film, but I really do think that I would put Killer of Killers right now at number 2. It is that damn good. Originally I had put Prey at number 2, but I would bump that down to 3, and Predators at 4, Predator 2 at 5, the original Alien vs. Predator at 6, The Predator at 7, and Aliens vs. Predator Requiem at 8 now. But really anything above those bottom 2 is at least enjoyable to me, and I'm just a huge fan of the Predator franchise. And that about does it for my review of Predator Killer of Killers. I'd love to know what you thought of this film, because I am absolutely crazy about it right now. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd, and I was really excited to talk about this for a review. You know, when I was planning on watching it, I knew it was coming out. I was like, well, maybe I'll make a video on it if I have something to talk about. I like to do these reviews on new entries to franchises that I've already done retrospectives on. So, you know, I've done things like Wolfman or Godzilla X Kong or -1, things like that, and update the rankings. And so I was thinking, you know, I'll probably end up doing it, but I was so excited by the end of this film and I enjoyed it so much that I really wanted to jump on it and talk about it in a video. So I hope that you enjoyed my thoughts on Killer of Killers. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons and members for their continued support. If you'd like to be a patron or member, it's only $2 a month for early access to every video and exclusive member and patron-only reviews. For the month of June, for Summerween, which this fits in very well to, I'm talking about Shaun of the Dead, which was voted on in a patron and member poll, and that'll be coming out sometime this month. And this is actually bumping back slightly in my calendar another video that I've already completed at the time making this, which is a ranking of the 13 best Friday the 13th movies that aren't Friday the 13th. But that's going to be coming out very, very soon, because that video is already done when I'm making this. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day and enjoying your Summerween.